Our top story this half hour, investigating the investigators. President Trump authorizing Attorney General Bill Barr to declassify information about the origins of the Russia investigation. As of now, no timeline has been revealed as to when this will happen. Joining us now, former prosecutor, criminal defense attorney David Bruno. This was somewhat expected, David, but what do you make of it?
Sure, I think it's big because, listen, there's so many attacks right now that Trump's covering up, and this is the opposite. Let's let everyone see it. Let's be transparent. And I think this is important, especially when we talk about the IG report that's coming out on the FISA abuse, right? Because that is one of the things that he's able to declassify. It's the Carter Page FISA abuse and also the George Papadopoulos initial reasons for the opening of the case. And so with that Inspector General report, do we have any sense of when this might happen? Also, this order to the Attorney General was also directed at the intelligence agencies, telling them to cooperate with the review that's going on within the Justice Department. Yeah, the IG report should be coming out probably a couple months. We're going to get that relatively soon. It might be a matter of weeks. Yeah, it's coming. And I think this is a sign that it's coming as well. It's really important because most of that FISA abuse information in the IG report would have been classified. So for them to do this now, I think is a good sign on that front. But the order for the head agencies to cooperate is really nothing new. They would have had to cooperate anyway. That's really not the big story here. It's the ability of AG Barr, without any direction from the president, to do it himself. He has the absolute power right now to make the decision himself to do these things.
So it's not a criminal investigation, correct?
Well, it's got to be if it's a Department of Justice investigation.
Well, it's a review right now, right? Actually. Yeah. No. Yeah. It's a review. It's called a review. That as it stands, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, as it stands now, this John Durham, the Connecticut U.S. attorney who is reported to oversee this, that it's just in the review stages. So he does not have subpoena power at the moment and cannot impanel a jury.
So the IG? Are we talking the IG?
No, we're talking
about
we're talking about within the Justice Department. The IG could make criminal referrals, right?
Correct.
John Durham's review within Justice is just a review right now, that they are not yet calling it an investigation.
Yeah, and the question is, I guess, what would ramp it up to that level? I mean, what further step is necessary either from the White House or in the DOJ to kind of make it a criminal investigation?
It really depends on what's found. Okay. I mean, I think it could go into a criminal investigation at any point.
Okay.
And it may be reviewed still, but they have to find evidence of a crime. Because that's what the Department of Justice does. I mean, they're the prosecuting agency.
Although we had 2 years of investigating Trump without any evidence of a crime, right? Or at least, I mean, that's at least what the president maintains, and that's what the Mueller report says.
Yeah, I agree. Look,
this order is without precedent for the most part, and does mark what the Journal describes a dramatic escalation in the power for the Attorney General. Richard, what do you think?
I think it's an interesting move by the president. I think he's trying to play some offense here, and what seems to be where he's trying to deal with this Congress. I think the question that I have is, how does this president sort of combat the fact that on Capitol Hill there is a move where this White House continues to disobey subpoena after subpoena after subpoena, and it seems as though the federal courts from what we've seen so far, seems to side with the Congress that you have to abide by these subpoenas.
Yeah, I mean, we've just had 2 recent court decisions which have said that the financial institutions have to provide documents as a result of the subpoena. So I do agree. I think ultimately when it lands in the courts, these witnesses are going to be compelled to testify.
Not Don McGahn. That's executive privilege.
Yeah, well,
Don McGahn does not have to testify.
You're right. I mean, there are privileges, right? Privilege would be the one reason why a witness could not. Fifth Amendment privilege, executive privilege, whenever privileges exist, has to be invoked. But I disagree that Don McGahn shouldn't have appeared. I think he should have appeared and actually invoked those privileges personally.
But that just comes down to political theater, right?
Right, that's what it was.
He's going to go in there and basically not answer any questions, and everyone will say, oh, now we know they're covering up everything. You know, in some ways, why would the White House allow that? I mean, I agree with that.
I push back on that a little bit, because I think if this president, given that this president needs to win this upcoming election, which is 17 months away, and if he's trying to play the role as a victim, and he's like, listen, the Congress is out to get me, me, this is a witch hunt, then by covering it up and not following subpoenas, he plays into this idea.
No, this language of cover up is making me crazy, because that is a reference to the Nixon problem where he left office for a cover-up. So
I get that, but when you abide by
is invoking that language quite intentionally. What cover-up?
I can explain this. I can explain this. I don't know the president at all, but he cooperated so much in the Mueller investigation. And Congress is going after his tax records from Mazars, from Deutsche Bank, from Capital One financial information. They're fighting it in the courts. But you're right. Congress has broad oversight power, and the courts will ultimately likely side with Congress. He doesn't have executive privilege over that information. But when he does, when you're talking about a White House counsel, there is no way in a holy, you know what, that president is going to allow people where he can invoke executive privilege to sit in front of Congress. Don McGahn talked to Bob Mueller because Bob Mueller worked within the executive branch.
But
that's the difference.
But here's the thing. The White House has lost this battle before around the White House counsel not testifying. When Harriet Miers, when George Bush tried this with Harriet Miers, they lost in the courts, and Harriet Miers had to go down, and she had to testify. So playing this game it's a losing battle to for posturing purposes when you know you're going to lose and precedent does not exist on your
all
side.
That's legal. Like, all that matters is what's in the trunk. You know, when you pull someone over incorrectly and they have a bunch of weed in the back of the trunk and the cop wasn't supposed to pull over you, you get off in court. But, like, in this case, the American people aren't going to care if you were pulled over incorrectly. They're just going to care what was in the trunk. If there's a body in the trunk, you're going down as the president, right?
Well, you know, we had a big school bus called the Mueller Report.
Exactly.
And when they pulled up in front of the school and they opened the doors, you know what was in there? No conspiracy and no cooperation with Russia. And you can make the argument in the second part of it whether there was any obstruction. No charges from AG Barr.
There was no body in the car, but they haven't looked in the trunk yet.
They did look in the trunk, and there was nothing there with the Russia problem.
Right.
Now they're continuing to dig for information.
Volume 2 was definitely pretty salacious when it comes to evidence of possible obstruction of justice.
If you think it was obstruction, then Nancy Pelosi, bring it.
I'm not saying that it was, and I'm not saying that Mueller said it was. What Mueller was very clear on is, like, I can't come to this conclusion, but I definitely think that there's something to be looked into by the people, by the members of our
I would argue that obstruction
of
of justice will be acceptable to in a lot of people's heads if there is nothing in the trunk. That's the same thing. Like, if you tell the cops some lie and look in the trunk, but there's nothing in the trunk, you're not going to get as much trouble with the American people either.
There's no crime. There's no crime, and then you obstructed no crime. Okay, that makes sense to the American people. David, thank you. David Bruno. The U.S.